This is another Read Me Something reward for Reich E. Spore's Patreon. We are reading from my Oz-based novel, Polychrome, Chapter 54. I stared as Amanita disappeared within that roiling black mass, neither I nor Ugu moving. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the black lightning-shot cloud, that seemed to scream in anguish and hatred to my augmented senses, began to spin, funneling inward like a whirlpool, but from the center something began to grow. It grew, towering higher and higher, condensing shape and substance from smoky power, 100 feet, 200, 5, 1,000, a head the size of a castle tower, scale armored, black and poison green and silver, house-high blades of teeth, a dragon on a scale undreamed of. And it was laughing, a voice deep as thunder, yet with overtones I knew. "Now let us test your power, little mortal, for I have become the binding, taken to myself all the power of phantasms and souls I have sacrificed these centuries. Not precisely my plan, but now I wonder that I hesitated." The verdant dragon's eyes opened, blazing a venomous crimson, and as mad as the voice that spoke. "Oh, crap," I heard myself say. I glanced down and saw Ugu pale as a ghost. This hadn't been in any of his game plans either. I pointed down to him. "Stay," I said, and launched myself into the air. Have to see how dangerous she is. As soon as I left the ground, she spat out a column of black-edged green that slammed me back down like a sledgehammer. Even all the power of Oz seemed unable to overcome that absolute force. No wonder. The phantasms are said to be the ultimate in power, the greatest of the dark fairies, and she's apparently fused all of their power into one being, herself. Maybe it's not more powerful than I am as the Channel of Oz itself. "But how long will your power last, little boy?" that storm-deep voice said tauntingly, echoing my own thoughts. "Oh, perhaps if you could fight me with your true mortal capabilities, you would win, for surely nothing more magical than I is, or has ever been." But it didn't take a genius to see what she meant by "if." The titanic dragon flew thousands of feet overhead. I couldn't leap and bounce that high, and I couldn't fly without the power of fairy. I couldn't use the power of fairy, though, and still have my true mortal power, which was the only thing that might penetrate that monster's defenses. "So fight as you might, please. Fight and die screaming. But my magic is strong enough to survive anything you can deliver for a time, and a little time is all you have. And then shall I remain, and all of fairy will become mine." She smiled down a savage threat and hunger. "Oh, my king, I'm afraid I shall have no more use for you either. But then, after your failure today, I'm sure death will be a welcome release." Her head rose. "First, I will deal with your friends in your army, little mortal boy. That should hurt you a great deal." I looked with extended senses, memorizing what lay near my friends, 20 decimals of similarity, and I was there, next to the army. No time for reserves, the big guns are needed. And as she drew in her breath for a devastating attack, I concentrated. "You want to play with the big boys? Let me show you the biggest of them all!" And I grew, changing, feeling invincible armor covering me in gray scales, claws forming, a great sheet of spines growing between my shoulder blades, dwarfing even the castle below me, titanic, uncaring, unstoppable. And I roared a challenge to my opponent, whose eyes were no longer so arrogant, her breath drawn in, mine as well, and we both breathed at the same time, the blaze of electricity and nuclear fire from my back channeling into me, through me and outward, streaking out just as the verdant dragon breathed. Black-green power met a column of blue-white energy, and the two stopped, contesting as I fought her life-destroying breath with all the strength and will I had left. The point of contact blazed, a sphere of seething radiance that made the sun itself look dim and distant. She redoubled her attack, and I threw more of myself into my own, jagged-edged scales blazing red and blue behind, sending atomic holocaust outward, until suddenly both of us lost control and the energy exploded, shattering the last towers of the gray castle and knocking everyone but myself to the ground. But even in that moment the transformation reverted. Ugu's Eye of the Soul is still working, tied to them both. Once, and once only. She laughed again, a mad laugh that confirmed what I suspected. Her will might have allowed her to retain control, rather than becoming just one of an amalgam of all the minds that were once there. But there was nothing sane left. If I didn't beat her here, Fairy would be ruled by a monster without restraint or care, a sadistic, unpredictable sociopath with the power of a god. But that clash of power had also shown me she was right. We'd both thrown our full power into that contest, and hers was the equal of mine. And she was equal to me in another way. She was no longer just a giantess or transformed human. She was a living container of fairy power with all the flexibility that implied. Perhaps she lacked my imagination, but I didn't have that eye of the soul power to understand and negate everything she did. How funny. You'll protect them instead of attacking while I'm focused on them. You know that is the only chance you'd have, don't you? She shook her head mockingly. The next time you would be wise to attack me, for afterwards shall I concentrate on you. Do not disappoint me. I expected an adversary of intelligence, not a fool. She began to draw in her breath, and I knew she was right. I could sacrifice my friends and possibly get in a strike that would take her down. Or I could stand here protecting them until the power that even now burned like acid through me finally wore away the last of my soul. To do anything else would be stupid. And that triggered a memory, and the memory told me what I had to do. I prepared for my last moment, the only strike that might both save my friends and destroy Amanita Verdon. It terrified me. But I remembered her cruel laugh, saw her hands on the knife plunged into Polychrome's chest, and my own fury flared up with the power of Fairy. I called upon the ultimate reserve, the one I'd never used, strange twin to the blue and red I'd used before, dark hair, flaming golden in extremity. Orewa densetsu no chojin. You're right, that would be the smart thing to do. Villains try to be smart, find the safe and wise path. I grinned even as she, with a draconic smile, began to open her mouth, as the golden power exploded about me and shook the earth once more. But in the words of Marvel's Thor, heroes have an infinite capacity for stupidity. And I blazed up from the ground straight for her. The ravening column of emerald ebony fire blasted forth again, and with a scream of agony, I focused all the power of Fairy ahead of me, splitting that gargantuan flame down the center. Just a little farther, a little closer, faster, faster, Kaioken! The fire raged around me, eroding defenses, burning, scorching in a sick and twisted agony, nothing like the purifying incandescence of Ozma's power. But I could spare no more. I had to drive faster, faster, red gold aura blazing like the burning of my soul, feeling the air itself screaming louder than my own voice. Even through the searing dragon fire, I could now see the immense black-scaled head looming ever closer, closer. And I yanked in all the power of Fairy. I was an unguided missile, a bullet of true mortality, with winds tearing at my blistered skin, and the dragon fire vanished about me, the dragon eyes widened. My speed threatened to rob me of breath and consciousness, but I hung on and snapped out my arms into the bone-breaking airstream, envisioning the mortal power streaming outwards in both directions as I plunged straight down her throat.